Hello there. Today I'm continuing my look at New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs that have been grown from regions outside Marlborough. So somewhere in the region of 72% of New Zealand's Sauvignon Blanc, a variety that this country is really quite famous for producing, comes from this one region, Marlborough, at the top of the South Island. So with 28% of it coming from elsewhere, one of the regions I thought I'd look at today is Waipara, or North Canterbury, and this particular wine is the Boneline Riverbone Sauvignon Blanc. So, as I say, the region is Waipara, the vintage is 2023. Now this particular winery is on a site that was purchased in 1989 by two couples. So they were Vic Tutton and Lindsay Hill, and Vic's brother Paul and Olga Sienko. And they'd done a lot of work prior to purchase, travelling throughout the region, doing soil sampling, seeing the soil structure, also looking at climate data. And the site they found here at the Boneline really is quite a particular site. It's an amphitheatre of vines with 4 terraces of exposed rock strata dating back something like 65 million years, and the Boneline references the fact that this rock strata is rich in fossils, particularly actually more recent fossils, bones from the moa, which was the large flightless bird that lived in New Zealand prior to human habitation here. So the geological feature referenced, the Boneline, is actually known as the KT boundary line. But the soils here are free draining. They're on the north side of the Ashley River, and the site is really quite special. The region is sheltered by the Southern Alps, so you get quite low rainfall here, with dry autumns and good diurnal temperature variations, so giving good ripeness and yet enabling the fruit to retain freshness and to keep the wine balanced. Viticulture is conducted here without the use of inorganic fertilizers or pesticides. The first vines were planted in 1990 and they consisted Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot and Sauvignon Blanc. As at that time there was no phylloxera in South Island, these vines were planted entirely on their own roots. Now in 2023 the Waipara region was spared a lot of the climate extremes that occurred further north, where flooding caused devastation in Hawke's Bay and quite a lot of damage in the Auckland region as well. However, the season was cool and the ripening cycle was somewhat delayed. There was in fact 100 millimetres of rain that fell in March, but thankfully the weather was settled for harvest, and the fact that the soils were free draining and the hillside site ensured there was no disease pressure as a result of the humidity, allowing healthy fruit to be harvested. The fruit for this wine was hand-picked, came from 3 plots, and they were picked on the 11th, the 13th and the 20th of April 2023. Evidently the fruit was crushed by foot, and following crushing it was allowed to soak for 48 hours prior to being pressed. It was pressed into seasoned old oak barrels, and these were 320 litre barrels, and they're described as being cigar barrels, which is a quite peculiar long thin shape, I assume akin to the cigar barrels developed by Didier Daguerre in Pouilly-Fumé. The juice wasn't allowed to settle, it went into the barrels in a turbid state, and there fermentation was initiated with indigenous yeasts, and in fact fermentation went on at ambient temperatures. The fermentation wasn't cooled. So actually you've got quite large barrels, so they're likely to have got relatively warm during fermentation, and so that should give a richness in terms of texture and flavour. The wine stayed in barrels with its lees, although there's no note of those lees having been stirred up particularly, for 9 months following fermentation. And after that it went briefly into stainless steel tanks prior to bottling. Perhaps it was at that stage that the wine from the 3 different plots was blended. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we? We're looking at a wine that has a pale to medium yellow colour. The alcohol is at 13.5%, so I'm expecting this to, yes, there you go, it's throwing some tears onto the side of the glass there, but it's not hugely viscous. So let's have a look at the aromas, shall we? Those aromas are really quite pronounced and they're very pungent. There really is a very attractive, quite tropical top note to the aromas. while there is an underlying sort of cut grass, asparagus, pea pods note, really what is to the fore is this tropical nature, is sort of passion fruit, almost through to mango touches. They're quite intense. And then there is a sort of a slight savoury note on the mid palate there. And then it opens up to give those sort of mango notes again, almost mango, peach skin, that sort of ripe tropical note. So let's have a taste. On the palate, the wine is dry. It has a lovely richness. Again, I'm coming back to that sort of mango ripeness, peach skin note. The wine's got mid-weight and it's got some structure, so that's really showing up the effect of the time that had with the skin in contact with the juice prior to being pressed and fermented. There is an almost sort of slightly velvety texture, and that's actually being supported by the richness of the 13.5% alcohol on the back palate. And yet at the same time, there is a lovely freshness coming through. Although the acidity isn't to the fore and it's not tart, there's some really quite good mineral acidity showing itself at this stage, just to enliven the mid palate and give a bit more sort of length to the finish, where again you've got these tropical notes coming through, but there you're seeing them along with some citric notes and some more delicate passion fruit aromas that were more obvious on the nose. There really is a good concentration, and I do enjoy the way the wine is developing. I actually think that given its sort of weight and richness, this possibly is a wine that would continue to develop in the cellar for 4 or 5 years. And I wouldn't generally find myself aging varietal Sauvignon Blanc. So to my mind, this has sort of greater richness, ripeness and structure than you would see with most Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. As yet, we don't have an aggregated critic score for this wine. It's only produced in very small amounts, 500 litres a year, I believe. So it's possible we may not see one. However, overall, all the vintages of this particular wine have an aggregated critic score of 90 out of 100. I think very definitely this particular vintage of this wine is exceeding that. It has a definition, it has a focus, and it has a balance and a structure that put it quite significantly above that sort of level. I would be thinking this is probably worth a score of 93, 94 maybe. And I really do think it's a good quality example of a richer, riper style of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. There's plenty of complexity in there, and I find that really enjoyable. So thank you so much for joining us. I do hope you've enjoyed the tasting. If you have, do please press the like button. If you would like to watch more of these tastings, it would be fantastic if you'd consider signing up and following our YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate your support there. And also there'd be the added benefit that you can set yourself a notification and be alerted every time we publish a new video. If you have any comments you'd like to leave, please pop them in the comments box below. We're always really interested to hear what you have to say about the wines we're looking at, the tastings we're doing, or anything else that relates to that. If you have any friends you think might like to watch, do please feel free to pass the video on to them. We'd really appreciate your endorsement in that way. I will leave a link in the notes to this vintage of this wine so that you can find out about its availability in your market, what its pricing is, and then using the tabs on that page you can find out more about the producer, about the region, about the grape varieties, the winemaking, what the critics have said, any awards that it's won, what other users feel about it, and there's a pricing history and a tab where you can compare the vintages as well. So hopefully that's a means of providing all the information you'd possibly need to make a really informed decision about buying this wine. So thank you again for joining us, and I do hope you'll manage to make some time and come and join us for another tasting in the very near future. In the meantime, bye for now.